As the situation in Ukraine worsens, the repercussions are steadily being felt more widely and more deeply. Not least for Russia, as the international community steadily tightens the sanctions which are designed to squeeze the Putin regime. But the problem with sanctions is clearly that they can also affect people who they are not aimed at. Here in Jersey, we're bracing for increasing fuel prices as the flow from Russia into Europe is steadily cut off. But when you fill your car up at the pumps here or turn the heating on at home, where does that fuel come from? How much more might you need to pay? And will all this just accelerate our journey to becoming carbon neutral? To answer all those questions, I'm joined on the Bailiwick News Pod this week by John Best, a director at one of the local fuel suppliers, ATF Fuels. Mr. Best, thanks for coming in this morning to take part in the news pod. Now, I think we need to start by explaining exactly where do the fuel products we use in Jersey, where do they come from?
In order to do that, we have to start out by saying that the majority of, if not all of the fuels that come into Jersey or imported into Jersey are actually from the UK. But within the UK, we have to go further upstream from that to sort of understand the makeup of the industry. And in particular, in relation to what's happening in the east of Europe at the moment with Russia and Ukraine, it's worth saying that approximately only 6% of crude oil that is used to refine petroleum products was used by the UK in 2020. As you no doubt aware, Boris Johnson has made a statement this week to wean the UK off Russia oil altogether by the end of this year. And the reason I point that out is the majority of the UK, therefore the majority of the UK crude oil is actually either from the North Sea, from the US or from Norway. And those are the feedstocks that go into refine petroleum products.
Okay, so just pause there. So essentially 94% of the crude in the UK is not sourced from Russia. Obviously 6% as of last year's figures, I think you mentioned it is, but that may be changing in the future.
That's correct. It may have changed already.
Okay, so how does that then break down into the fuel products which then are refined and brought on to Jersey?
Yeah, okay, so if we start off, I'll start off giving you an overview of petrol. The UK is a net exporter of petrol. So the refining capacity, what that means is the refining capacity in the UK is more than equivalent than its own requirements. So the petrol that is imported into Jersey starts its life off in the UK, is refined, and then is brought across to Jersey in that form. And then if we look at diesel, the UK is a net importer of diesel, so it doesn't have enough refining capacity to match its requirements. So refined petroleum products such as diesel are imported into the UK, and again to fill that gap, Norway and US contribute to that. Also, one of the major other countries is the Netherlands, and as you're no doubt aware, there's the Netherlands acts as a large storage hub for refined product. That refined product can come from a variety of other countries, other sources, so other European countries, Middle East, etc. It's really used as a holding pot before it's traded and moved around either to other European countries or to the UK.
So it's possible, so some of that may come from Russia, but it's impossible to know how much and what, because it's, as you say, it's mixed.
Absolutely. All that product is commingled into large storage tanks. So for somebody to ask what the provenance of that fuel is, at a molecule level, it's frankly impossible. But I think as we've already seen with governments taking action, UK governments, European governments taking action with the ongoing war in Russia, then that that those stock holdings will organically reduce as economies wean themselves off Russian oil or fuel.
Okay, so we took petrol and diesel. Just very quickly, any other products you want to mention?
Just very quickly, kerosene, which is a home heating oil, is how I've described diesel. It's pretty much the same, with the exception that some of the direct imports into the UK, come directly from the Middle East.
Okay, so let's move on to the point, I think, which people are raising this week, which is obviously pricing. I mean, it's going to be a very difficult situation for people as the situation in Ukraine develops, and potentially prices go up quite high. How do you see, as someone in the market, how do you see pricing change, say in the short term this year?
To be completely honest with you, we need a crystal ball to see, look forward and see what is going to happen. I can only sort of give you an idea or a picture of what's happening or what's happened in most recent history. So if we go back to just 2-3 weeks ago, and taking the sort of average weekly market movements, we've seen increases week on week of 10p week 1, 10p increases in week 2, in round numbers across the products we've just mentioned. And this week, on a daily basis, the market opened up a further 10p on Monday, further 10p on Tuesday. So we were starting to see spot prices significantly higher than actually what fuel is being retailed at on the island currently, whether that be heating oil or petrol and diesel. That said, Wednesday, Thursday, we saw the same size of movements work in reverse. The markets dropped back 10p a litre Wednesday, 10p a litre Thursday. So I have 22 years I've had 22 years in the fuel industry, and I've never seen a market act like it's acting today. So it's really difficult to project or forecast what's going to happen in short, medium, or long term. And
how insulated or not are we from those fluctuations?
So I can obviously really only talk about ATF and our supply chain. Because we operate a just-in-time supply chain, so we don't have large stock holdings. We have daily shipments in of fuel. Our prices will match more closely the market movements, albeit we have different contractual arrangements and how we procure fuel from our suppliers. But in sort of holistic terms, the up or down, our prices move more quickly.
And are you changing your prices daily at the moment or not?
We're not changing them daily because of the commercial arrangements we have in place. We buy on different bases from our suppliers, but we are obviously monitoring the situation daily. And I suppose it's worth pointing out we're different, as we previously said, to other suppliers in Jersey, whereby they operate from a larger storage facility, have the potential to hold more stock, and potentially don't have to pass on increases or decreases, have the ability to pass increases or decreases as quickly as we do. But again, they'll also have commercial arrangements, how they buy their fuel, whether that be on the spot market, on a lagged basis, buying forward. All of those different sort of mechanisms are all considered within the fuel price. So it's not one easy answer to give.
Is there anything else that can be done to try and insulate customers from some of these increases? I mean, you've spoken that it's a just-in-time service, so effectively you've got to track the market. But there's nothing else that we'll come on to the government in a second, but there's nothing else you can do as a business to try and insulate people from those volatile changes.
Yeah, I mean, we try and operate as any business should on a least cost basis to run our business. So we've done that since we started in Jersey 5 years ago. We continue to do that. It is very difficult for us to, well, it's impossible for a business our size, or in fact any business in Jersey, to influence the actual wholesale price of fuel. It's just impossible. So unfortunately, if we're paying more for the fuel or less, then we have to pass that on to the consumer, otherwise we won't be in business.
Okay, so I mentioned the government. You spoke to a scrutiny panel this week, and you talked about the government not going ahead with the 5p increase in duty. Why do you think they should do that? Why do you think they should remove that?
I think it's just there's at this point in time, and possibly remove it is the wrong word, but at least suspend it or a proportion of it for a period of time whilst we experience these the cost of living pressures that we are. And in actual fact, if you considering fuel, it's not just the fuel price for the motorist or for somebody who's using oil to heat their homes. Every transport company obviously uses fuel. Grocery retailers use fuel to move food to their stores. So it's not just impacting the cost of living from a fuel perspective. It's wide ranging and obviously influences the price of food that we're picking up out on the shelves as well.
But that would be a cost to the government. Presumably they'd have to fund that.
Yeah, there would. And we think there's a balancing out currently available to do that for the government. So if there was a suspension of a proportion of the duty at the time, as things stand, if we take a period in time 12 months ago to where we are today in terms of the increased revenue that the government are getting from GST on fuel sales, we're talking, according to our math, we're talking about an increase of currently of 2.5p per litre, which is significant in fuel terms. It might not sound a lot, but when you take that over the total road transport volumes used in the island, it's a big number, and that's a value that the government 12 months ago couldn't have foreseen to budget for. So it's extra income and revenue that they have that could possibly be used to offset a suspension of duty.
I mean, this does move us into the kind of the wider trends that we're seeing at the moment. Though the carbon neutral roadmap lodged today, we knew what was in it last December. So some of those measures were subsidies for buying electric vehicles, cheaper green fuel, incentives to move away from fossil burning heating, importation of petrol, diesel cars, vans banned by 2030. Those measures that we know about. So that proposal lodged today. Do you not think, though, that these increasing prices, we don't know where the situation is going to go in the Ukraine. It could get worse. It obviously could improve, but it's likely to get worse at the moment. It's just going to move those trends more quickly, isn't it? Which is going to threaten how you go about business.
I think it has the potential to. What I would say, particularly in the transport industry, is all that said, there still needs to be the infrastructure available to move towards electrification of vehicles and electric vehicle use. So as we've said and we've pointed out recently to the scrutiny panel regarding the carbon neutral roadmap, what there needs to be an understanding of is that there are fuels available, transition fuels that have renewable elements that for that period of time will go in some way to helping the government achieve their carbon net zero goals whilst the infrastructure is built out and is in place for that time. And of course, taking one step on from that, passenger vehicles are the easiest vehicles to electrify. We're still going to have a demand for fossil fuels or biofuels for medium heavy duty goods vehicles that are a lot harder to electrify.
So what would you like to see? So the duty lower or even removed completely on sustainable fuel for this transition period? So
I think to change behaviour, that the duty on renewable fuel, let me rephrase that. The cost variance is wide. So if we take second generation renewable fuel as a starting point, compared to standard diesel, so the cost variance is approximately 70 pence per litre in the product cost. The government is suggesting to subsidise that by 32p a litre. So it's still 40p a litre more than standard road diesel. We've seen the price of standard road diesel increase. Renewable diesel is linked to the price of standard road diesel, so that will again organically move upwards, or backwards, depending on the market movements. Anyway, so we don't believe that a level of 30p, 40p a litre with the subsidy more than standard diesel, it's sufficient to change consumer behaviour. And in actual fact, what we actually believe is that if we're using a greener fuel such as second generation diesel, it should be used in a more targeted way. So for the buses, public transport, for example, possibly taxis, that would be harder to control, and that way we could have a greener public transport fleet and hopefully encourage people to get out their cars and into public transport.
Do you worry about the viability of the industry? The reason I ask that is that they've been taught this week of prices going up as high as 175 a litre. We've got no idea whether that'll actually happen or not. But if we do start to reach those levels, so people change their behaviour, they buy less basically because they do other things. But when do you become concerned about viability?
I think there is definitely that consideration. As I previously said, there is going to be a period of transition where volumes are going to decrease anyway. This may or may not accelerate those decreases. And I think that's where we have to look as an island, actually, what our infrastructure going forward, what our infrastructure requirements are. Do we have overcapacity? Are we paying for a storage facility that is too large for the island's requirements? Is a more suitable supply chain, a just-in-time supply chain, where volumes can be brought across on a as-needed basis rather than significant volumes that will sit in storage tanks for a long period of time.
John Best, thanks for your comments. And we'll keep you fully up to date with how all this develops, both here on the News Pod, but also on its sister Politics podcast and on bailiwickexpress.com and on DAB Radio. Incidentally, this week's Politics Pod is with the Environment Minister, John Young. That's out now, and you can find it in all the usual pod places. You know what to do, like and share until you can like and share no more. We'll be back with more on the News Pod next week, but for now, thanks for listening.